There are some important things that are going on right now that I don't think anybody, frankly, right now is paying attention to or is aware of. And these don't necessarily connect in the same way that what we talk about here on the channel normally does, but these stand in an important light on their own accord, and I want everybody to be aware of this. First of all, we need to talk about whales, because whales over the past several days have been doing something that is actually consistent with what they've done over the course of October, and I think people have missed this. Secondly, we need to have a discussion about open interest, because there is actually a continuation going on there, which is actually a good thing. But lastly, we need to talk about today, because this is the original deadline for the ADA spot ETF. What does that mean? Does it mean we have delays, or are we seeing something else entirely? We'll discuss all that in this video. So again, I appreciate, as always, show your support for the channel down below, hit that subscribe button, that bell, and let's just dive right into this. First of all, the month of October has been a rough month. All right. Actually, it frankly hasn't been that bad. And why I'm saying that is we're down 16% overall. And really, it was all one day that kind of sent us into the shitter, per se. That was Friday, October 10th. We obviously know what happened there. But I will say this week has been actually pretty decent. We're up 3.65%. This is the first green week we've seen since that last week that started in September. And so now we're trying to basically get our feet under us. We're trying to create this little bit of correction in the crypto market. But that hasn't slowed down a few things that have been going on. First of all, whales have actually been accumulating. First of all, over the last 2 days, whales have actually bought 50 million ADA. This is the ADA holders, the whales that are holding between 10 to 100 million ADA. These tend to be the more wishy-washy speculative whales in the space. But guess what? Not only have they added over the course of the last 2 days, but October for them has been up only. They have been accumulating and accumulating and accumulating. Basically, the start of October is right here. And so you can see over the course of this month, they have been increasing their supply. Well, obviously, we've been in a dip. And so what you're seeing is this take place not just in terms of ADA, but in terms of other assets in the crypto market. You're seeing heavy accumulation by large entities in the space, and they are not balking at the drops in the market. They're taking advantage while retail is capitulating. People are screaming from the rooftops that the market cycle's over, that we're fading away, blah, 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 all the crap that you hear. You got to follow the money, and the money's showing you something completely different right now. Second of all, what we're actually seeing currently is this continued retraction in terms of open interest size in the crypto market. I looked at this over the course of this last month, and what I found is we obviously know that this is very heavily driven by retail right now. Retail has been the main traders in terms of open interest. Whales and mid-sized wallets have been kind of quiet. But what's very interesting about this is they have continued to retract and retract and retract. And so what we're seeing is actually right now, despite the market finding some stability, retail's not making the same mistake that they were making, where we were seeing heavy amounts of retail volume, which is retail open interest, which is why we saw such a big drop in the crypto market in the first place. So we actually just hit the average order size of 2.12K for comparison's sake back here on October 11th. Right when we were starting to talk about this retraction after our big drop in the market, 2.42K. All right. So it's actually dropped by over 10% in terms of order size just from then to now. So that is exactly what we want to see, is retail doing more spot trading and less open interest trading. That, if that makes sense, that's a really big deal. And I think that's probably why the market is finding more stability, that even though we've had some of these shakeouts, they've been lessened, and they're setting up higher lows. And that's why we're breaking out of this inverse head and shoulders and yada, yada, like we talk about, right? Now, I do want to talk about this. This is a comment from a viewer, makes tons of comments here on the channel. I'm sure you guys have seen it. Christian GTCS, he said, the Cardano ETF has been delayed to 2026. And that is incorrect. All right. First of all, the original deadline for the ADA spot ETF, I believe this is the grayscale one, but there's others as well, was in fact earlier this year, but it got delayed until October 26. Now, the problem is the whole process for ETFs has in fact changed. When the SEC changed their rules basically for getting these spot ETFs approved, it basically eliminated these deadlines per se, because the process isn't the same. You don't need all these different forms. If you guys remember, they even had certain entities remove their 19B4 forms. So right now, where we're actually sitting at is kind of in limbo. There's not a hard deadline per se. And really what we're waiting for is the government shutdown to conclude. So what I'm thinking happens, and this could happen in, November, it could happen in December. It still may not happen in 2026, but the SEC is probably going to have a big sweeping wave of ETF approvals. It's going to be very abrupt, and it's going to surprise and catch a lot of people off guard. And It's kind of funny that I think even people are anticipating that the SEC needs to go through this same lengthy review process, because we've now had ADA actually implemented into 2 basket ETFs that are approved and good to go. Or actually, I think they might even be live already, but I'd have to look back. We look at so much information here, but so no, we're not delayed per se. I guess if you want to say, oh, that's the hard date in my mind and we're not there and then we're delayed, sure, go ahead and say that. But this isn't a true delay. It's not like the SEC is kicking the can down the road. The SEC is not functioning right now, if that makes sense. So that's kind of where we're at there. But I think that that's going to send a sweeping wave of excitement into the markets. And, it seems like we're starting to get to this point where we have a lot of, again, the good news taking over now that we're kind of extending from this big black swan event that we dealt with in terms of price. And Dan Gambardello actually made a very good post here. He said, out of nowhere, Cardano will probably double $1 to $3.30. Everyone will think it's another macro fake out. People will sell. ADA will keep going up. People will then buy. People will then panic buy. Then it'll consolidate. Then people will panic sell, and then it'll keep going up again. And this is true. This is probably the process that we're going to go down. This is what happens time and time again in these market cycles is, people think they're smarter than the rest and they get caught and things run away from them. Then they get stuck chasing. Then we get adoption. It's not really anything new. It's just that this cycle has had some different players in the space that have caused some manipulation. But at the same time, it's kind of no, I'm not going to say it's a good thing, but it has made the cycle somewhat unpredictable again. I think we got into this point where you need some unpredictability, especially with a lot of the same users here that were here last market cycle. That's why adoption is so important, because when everybody thinks they're smarter than everybody else, you have a lot of the same money fighting against each other, and it's hard to get these big rip-roaring euphoric pumps that we see cycle after cycle. So that's kind of my thoughts on that, but I like where we're at. I like the fundamental progress that we're seeing. Big embrace is coming, and yeah, I have to say I'm pretty excited. I'm tempering my expectations, but I'm excited nonetheless. So I appreciate you guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know your thoughts below, but have a great day. Catch you guys in the next one. Take care.